Hello friends, Ash here. Welcome back to Gents. Today I have a huge matchup with the two most popular fragrances in the entire country to determine once and for all which is better. Those two fragrances, Bleu de Chanel Eau de Toilette and Dior Sauvage Eau de Toilette. The two fragrances that respectively kicked off their absolutely enormous fragrance line for these two powerhouse companies. This is gonna be a new series that I do where I match fragrances up against one another and I rank them from 1 to 10 with 10 different categories. At the end, I'll add up all of their points and see which one is better. And also, you guys will be involved because I'm going to poll you with each matchup to let you vote on which one you think is better. And at the end of this video, I'll give you the poll results for these two. So we're going to see which one I think is better, which one you guys think is better, and see if we match or disagree. These probably don't need too much of an introduction. Both of these really well known for their versatility, their complement factor, kind of their similarities as well. At least similarities in that they're both blue fragrances made to be worn basically every day. I'll have each of these linked in the description. Check them out down there. And if you would like some codes, pause the video now for some codes that you can use for different percentages off at a bunch of different websites. All right, let's do it. Round one, the opening. So Dior Sauvage is a fragrance that's really well known for its opening because it's so powerful. You have citrus in there, you have pepper, and also ambroxan, a decent amount of it. So it has kind of a metallic feeling. It'll definitely make your presence known. Like I said, it's very loud, so it could potentially be cloying to some people. Whereas Bleu de Chanel over here is a little bit fresher off the top. It's got citrus that comes across a little bit more classy and sophisticated to me. And it has a nice, zingy, fresh spiciness with a little touch of sweetness there, as opposed to the kind of sledgehammer opening of Sauvage Eau de Toilette. Now, I personally like both of these openings. I think they both smell great, but I do think one of them is better. So for me, Dior Sauvage, this is gonna get a 7.5 in the opening. Bleu de Chanel, it's gonna get a 9. I just think overall, the Bleu de Chanel opening is classier, it's blended a little bit better, it's less aggressive, and just smells a little more appealing. Next, let's talk dry downs. Now for me, Sauvage gets much better as it dries down. It smooths out a lot. It does get a little more sweetness in there and just becomes much more appealing. But I don't know if it's as appealing as Bleu de Chanel. Bleu de Chanel has a nice bit of woodiness in there, incense as it dries down. Again, it's gonna smell a little classier, a little better put together, maybe you could say. So Sauvage, that one is gonna get an 8.5 from me in the dry down. Again, I think it smells better as the fragrance dries down, but those are still good scores, 7.5, 8.5. I think it smells great. Bleu de Chanel, gonna give that one a 9. For both the opening and the dry down, for me, Bleu de Chanel, that kind of sets the pace for what this type of fragrance can be. But of course, that's not all when it comes to fragrances, the opening and the dry down. There's so much more. Let's talk versatility. Both of these are blue fragrances. Both of them are made to be used as much as possible. But I do think one of these is more versatile than the other. Dior Sauvage is great for a night out, for situations where you're wanting to cut through the crowd and really get noticed. Bleu de Chanel is a little more reserved, but because it is more reserved, I think it's more versatile. Between these two, which one would I choose to wear to the office? Bleu de Chanel. More formal situation, Bleu de Chanel. Casually, either. A date, either, but I'd lean Bleu de Chanel. So while Dior Sauvage is extremely versatile, I think that Bleu de Chanel, because of that classiness, is going to edge it out. So I'm gonna give this one a 10 for versatility, because I truly think that Bleu de Chanel, the Eau de Toilette, the Eau de Parfum, some of the most versatile fragrances ever. Sauvage, a solid 8. Now let's talk about one of the most important things for you guys out there, the compliment factor. Dior Sauvage is well known for being just an absolute behemoth when it comes to pulling positive attention, pulling compliments, and it is. Absolutely, this stuff is fantastic for pulling compliments. Bleu de Chanel is very good as well, but I don't think it hangs with Dior Sauvage. It's not as loud, you know, the performance is not quite there to get noticed by as many people, and also the fragrance in general is, as I've said a couple times, a little more sophisticated, a little more reserved, whereas Dior Sauvage is very personable, you know, it's putting itself out there. So between the two, Sauvage gets a 10 for the compliment factor, Bleu de Chanel an 8. Now let's start talking performance with longevity. Dior Sauvage is strong. I've said that a couple times, but Sauvage really shines in terms of overall performance. Bleu de Chanel is not bad off my skin, but it's not great either. For me, it would be a little bit above your average Eau de Toilette blue fragrance on the market. So for overall longevity, I'm gonna give Bleu de Chanel a 7 and Sauvage an 8.5, though I think realistically you could even push Sauvage a little bit higher. And for some people, I know they would push Bleu de Chanel a little bit lower, but that's where I'm going to stick. But longevity is not the only part of performance. No, there's also projection. And Sauvage, frankly, off my skin crushes Bleu de Chanel in terms of projection. Now, the longevity is pretty good for Bleu de Chanel. As I said, is 7, but it sits closer to your skin a lot quicker than Sauvage does. Sauvage will project for a really long time, hours and hours, and if you go heavy with this stuff, it's gonna be there forever. You're just gonna be choking people out left and right. Again, going back to versatility, that's why Bleu de Chanel is a little safer in the office than Sauvage. You spray this on too heavy in the office, you're gonna have people like asking you to go home and change. Try to wash that off, not happening. So in terms of projection, Bleu de Chanel is gonna get a 6.5, Sauvage a 9. I think that overall, in terms of performance, Sauvage is clearly the better performing fragrance for me than Bleu de Chanel is. Next category is value for money. So with this one, you have to kind of take into account other things that you could get for around that price point. Could you get things that do the job better for less? Could you get a lot of things for what you would have to pay to get just one of these? Stuff like that. So at full retail, for a 100 ml size bottle, Bleu de Chanel Eau de Toilette in the US is $125. Dior Sauvage is $120. So it is slightly cheaper than Bleu de Chanel, but that's not enough to make a difference. Now, if we're including discounters, Bleu de Chanel is pretty much not at discounters. You can occasionally find a bottle here or there at Joma shop for a minor discount. A Dior Sauvage, you can find that at more discounters, and they do have discounts for Dior Sauvage. They're just usually not that much. But as of this video, I can pretty easily find 100 ml bottles of Sauvage Eau de Toilette for about $100 at discounters. Bleu de Chanel, I really can't. So when you take that into account, 125 for Bleu de Chanel, 100 for Dior Sauvage, I would say the overall value for money for me is about a 5.5 for Bleu de Chanel and a 6 for Sauvage. Neither is an amazing bang for your buck because you can't find them heavily discounted, but at least you can find Dior Sauvage for a little bit less. So it gets the half-point victory there. Now the perceived quality for the price. When you smell it, does it smell like it should cost as much as you paid? Or do you smell it and you think, oh, this smells like it should cost way more than what I paid? Or the opposite, does it smell like, oh, I paid way too much for this. Now, I personally think both of these have great quality. I think that they smell really appealing. They do the job very well. Obviously, they both have very good versatility. This one has very good performance. In terms of perceived quality for me personally, I would give Bleu de Chanel an 8.5. Yes, it's a designer fragrance. It smells like a designer fragrance, but I mean, that's what it is. And to me, it smells very well done. The blend is good here. The ingredient quality smells good. Nothing sticks out. Nothing smells rough around the edges. Just an extremely well done, versatile blue fragrance. Dior Sauvage, I'm gonna give a 7.5. I still think the quality is good here for the money. It's just, I think overall, especially if we're talking retail prices, Bleu de Chanel gets a little nod for me. And part of that's just gonna be the opening here. I don't dislike the opening, but I do think that Bleu de Chanel comes across to me as a little higher quality when you smell it side by side. Now the presentation. Both of these I think actually really nail the presentation. Bleu de Chanel looks classy, it looks elegant, has a really nice magnetic cap, just well done. Dior Sauvage, same thing. Also looks extremely well done. Has a great magnetic cap, strong magnetic cap. But as you can see with this, there is a difference that to me makes a difference. Bleu de Chanel has a fine atomizer. Dior Sauvage though has a really good pressurized atomizer. So Sauvage, 8.5, Bleu de Chanel, 8. And we are at the final category here, uniqueness. Nowadays, a lot of you would look at these two and maybe say, oh, well, they're blue fragrances, and there's so many blue fragrances out there at this point, they're not really that unique. I beg to differ though. Bleu de Chanel came out in 2010, and at that point, there really wasn't a blue fragrance family, a blue fragrance style. You had YSL L'Homme, which had a ginger citrus opening, which a lot of blue fragrances used something similar to that as time went on. You had Abercrombie & Fitch Fierce, which had a very versatile sort of scent profile, which was maybe like the blue fragrance of its day, but nothing that was really like this. So when it came out, I feel like it was really unique. So I'm gonna give that an 8. For this style of fragrance, I know, as I said, that nowadays you would smell this and say, oh, well, whatever. But when this came out, it was definitely new, something new. Obviously it was new because it was a new release. And with Sauvage, you can't really say it's as unique as Bleu de Chanel. Because at the time Sauvage came out, there was already Bleu de Chanel Eau de Toilette and Eau de Parfum. You had Versace Eros, you had Ultramall, you had Mont Blanc Legend, which again, kind of smells like Fierce. That Fierce DNA, it's always gonna be around. Admittedly, the Bleu fragrance arms race had not kicked off in a huge way at the point that Sauvage was released, but still this kind of style was starting to slowly creep into the mainstream. So not as unique as Bleu de Chanel, but I still think overall decently unique, at least when you look at the landscape of fragrances when it came out. So I will give Sauvage a 6.5 for uniqueness. So when we tally the scores up, Bleu de Chanel gets a 79.5 out of 100. Dior Sauvage gets an 80 out of 100. Yeah, that close. And I have to be 100% honest with you guys here. When I tallied everything up the first time, it was 80 to 80. So yeah, it was a complete tie. And when I looked through all the different categories, I was like, well, whichever one won the most categories will win as a tiebreaker. But that was also tied 5-5. So for me, it truly is that close. I had to go through each category over and over and over, trying to figure out, well, who would lose half a point in one of these categories? And it just ended up being Bleu de Chanel. So I guess if I have to choose a winner based off of mainly the points that it got in performance, Sauvage wins. But as you can see, when you go through each category, Bleu de Chanel won a bunch of those as well. There's a reason that these are the #1 and 2 best sellers in the US. It's because they're so equally matched. Maybe Bleu de Chanel does one thing better than Sauvage, but then Sauvage does another thing better than Bleu de Chanel. Both amazing, versatile blue scents, kind of the kings of the mountain. But how did you guys vote? Well, it really wasn't close. You voted 65% against 35% for the winner, Bleu de Chanel. So for you guys, it was a much more clear-cut victory for the Chanel. For me, essentially tied. So in this battle of which is better, Sauvage for me barely squeaks by. And yet for you guys voting, Bleu de Chanel wins in the landslide. I wanna thank you guys for hanging with me. We'll do another one of these really soon with another matchup. Stay safe out there, guys. I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you later.